minutes past 12 it is on the Mannin Line. We're with Breesha and Joe and Sam from Ballacameen High School, the people behind the scheme of bringing Syrian refugees to the Isle of Man. Now, the £1.5 million has provided a lifeline for 30,000 refugees in Jordan and Lebanon. So how do you counter Howard's opinion? What would you say to Howard?
Well, I think, first of all, it's a really interesting point that he brought up about, Britain during World War II, the Blitz, the similarities. But I think there are a few crucial differences. For example, during the Blitz, Britain, though we were obviously continuously under attack, we had the ability to draw on the resources of our the empire at the time. A quarter of the world stood behind us and supported us through that. Not to mention the fact that Britain it's a naturally formed country. We are where we are. Syria is a country that has been artificially created by colonial powers, since the Middle East borders are essentially, they're artificial. They're not natural. So the idea that these people who historically, the regions aren't meant to be structured like that.
Joe?
Should stay and fight. Yeah.
And you said about the point about people staying and fighting and during the Blitz that they did. But in fact, what we are proposing is the Syrian Vulnerable Person Resettlement Scheme, which is similar to evacuating children during World War II, which is what Britain did. And that's what we're proposing, is that people who couldn't fight and can't help their country go somewhere safe, which is exactly what happened during World War II.
Okay, there's lots and lots of comment, and I'm just going to read these out. Where are the refugees going to be housed? Which of our already busy doctors were expected to deal with non-English speakers, and exactly how? The young people, Alan said, young people are doing a great job to help refugees. As long as we have food banks on the island, says Dave, people here are suffering. What right do we have to increase the problem with refugees? John said, I'm getting sick and tired of these kids trying to preach to the older generation about things such as bringing refugees and or saving the planet. Let them get a job and donate their money to that, they say. Just wondering if any of your guests or listeners have seen the recent TV documentary. For Sama, it was very enlightening regarding the Syrian refugee issue. Yet again, we have young people not having a clue about what they're talking about. Rose-coloured glasses. Listen, boys and girls, let's see if you have the same view of life 10 or 20 years' time, says Gary in Ramsey. Breesha, you're 16, aren't you?
No, I'm 15.
You'll be 16 by the time the next general election comes on the Isle of Man.
Yes.
You'll have the vote.
Yep.
What will you be asking your prospective MHK? Will you be asking them about Syrian refugees, maybe?
Probably, yeah. If the petition isn't successful, then I'll ask, or if it is successful, I will ask.
How do you counter them people who seem concerned, perhaps genuinely scared, that bringing Syrian refugees is going to import Islamic terrorism to the Isle of Man?
That's, I think that's very racist, and plain and simple.
I think, as opposed to, it's. I'm wondering what the exact term is, because it's not quite racist because Islam isn't a race, but neither is it. It's close to xenophobia. I'm not sure of the exact word. I'm sure there is one for fear of foreign religions.
But just to all the people who are saying that we don't have jobs, me and Joe do have jobs. We do contribute to society. Unfortunately, I don't earn enough to pay tax, but if I did, I would 100% pay tax because I think it's a good thing. Yeah.
Well, you'll pay a lot of tax in your lifetime.
I will.
And you've got the opportunity to vote. You have a right. You're a citizen on the Isle of Man. You don't owe anybody anything. You've got your own opinion, and you're a young person with your life way ahead of you as well. So, and this is an ideal. You're an idealist where this is concerned. You want to help people.
Yeah.
Now. But there is a kind of, if you like, there's a generality about wanting to help people, but there's also a meaningful specific. So the question is, who would put Syrian refugees up? Would you expect the government to take money out of the fund that they currently spend, or would this be a charity? Would it be a church, or would it be individuals who would say, let's just say, for example, someone would say, I'll take a Syrian refugee for 2 years, I'll put them up, feed, clothe them, water them, do everything. What would you say, Joe?
I think that's what our petition is for. It's to look in the feasibility and how it would work if we did take any Syrian refugees. And I think the select committee that we are trying to get established would look into that and find the best possible route of that happening.
Joe, would you expect, and again, people are concerned, whenever you mention anyone who has the Muslim faith, some people shrink back and think they're going to walk here with bombs under their jackets. What do you say?
Well, I think those people should take their rose-tinted glasses off and look at the world as it is, and that 99.999% of people who have that faith aren't like that, and they don't believe in that. In fact, it's the opposite, and that's why these people are running away. Like that man said in that interview about the Isle of Bute, they're running away from ISIS. They are trying to get safe, and I think that we can give
It's
that
fair
to
to
them.
say as well, lots of the people are intellectuals. They're very gifted professionals. Some are architects, accountants, they're medical personnel as well. They're not peasants. These aren't illiterate people, are they?
No, they are like...
Do you think there's anything, Sam, in the point that if the Isle of Man did it, it may be good PR? I know it's a crass thing to say, but the Isle of Man gets lots of negative PR. But if the Isle of Man did it, do you think there'd be something in it for the island?
I definitely think. I think we only have, we have so much to gain from this. I think it would, like you say, we are really an international island. We kind of project ourselves across the world. And I think it's important that we set an example to show that we're willing to help others. And yeah, I think it would really show that the island is, in many ways, leading to try and become more progressive, more open, and a more loving place.
More love letters in now. Do we have full medical records about the migrants? Because health tourism costs billions to the health service, and that we and our ancestors paid into. HIV seems to be the gift that passes our current border system. Should we shoulder other countries' problems? Do we know if they have criminal records? What's wrong with these idiotic students? Are they bored with climate change, complaining? Where's the money going to come from to keep the Syrians? And are their students' families going to put them up in their homes free of charge? I don't think so. You are 16. Get a job, says Graham. That is a note in from Rob that says there seems to be a hell of a lot of new faces here roaming the streets in the day. Surely they're not all night workers. I asked the question, do the authorities know who they are? I bet they don't, says Rob. All these do good, well to talk kids preaching should be sorting out their own generation. Apparently, you have no respect for your elders or other people's property. You're not a thief, are you?
No,
I don't think so.
You've not vandalised anything today, have you?
Nope.
No, not today.
Okay, as long as they contribute to our society, even better if they have the skills, let's integrate them, says Len. Islamic refugees. One of the main reasons for Brexit is because we the British feel disenfranchised by cheap Eastern European staff. So taking in economic Islamic migrants will only raise tensions. We only have finite resources, so why give many of what our own don't have? So I think we should guarantee these people a one-way flight ticket home. Let's train and employ and invest in our own. Then even if there are roles available, hire foreigners. Says Andy. Role reversal. If something happened here, would you place a Manx refugee in the middle of Syria if they were displaced? No, totally alien, so why dump Syrian refugees here? Sending aid to them is better. These people need to rebuild their countries. Why only Syrians? What about Afghanistan, South Sudan, Myanmar, Somalia, Sudan, Democratic Republic of Congo? They all have millions of refugees. Help these people rebuild their homes and lives is better all around, so sending them money. The students in your studio are breathtakingly naive and a sad indictment of a large number of the island's youth. In an island with a growing homelessness problem, increasing numbers relying on food banks, a falling educational system, the priorities be elsewhere. Perhaps they feel so strongly about this, they'll house refugees themselves with the cost of their educational health needs and other living expenses. Back to school next week, guys. Presumably you have some studying to do. Why don't these... are you getting all this, May?
This is...
Yeah. Why don't you probably heard all this before. Why don't these attention-seeking students focus on things like homeless people over here? Your student guest should go and live in Bradford for 6 months before considering who to bring here. How many of these students will remain on the Isle of Man to deal with the future impact and costs of refugees? And also, somebody else who said, I've never heard such, this is in response to comments we've heard, I've never heard such right-wing bigotry in my life. Steve said, Howard made some interesting points. Britain was fighting a common goal then. Why do these young men choose to fight for so many factions? Although I agree, it needs to come from within somehow as well. No to, this is Terry, no to bringing economic Islamic migrants to our refugees to our island. They don't have respect for our customs. They want to introduce Sharia law in our Christian countries. We don't really know what their intentions are, but to look at the suicide bomber who killed 22 in Manchester, they clearly hold contempt for our society. Many thanks, says Terry. These young people have been brainwashed and guilt-tripped, peer pressure. They will never go home. Let's get real. The thin end, 25 is the thin end of the wedge. Would they be widowed women? Would these children's parents take in a refugee in their home? These youngsters should look what happened in countries around Europe that invited Syrian and other refugees. In Germany, France, Belgium, Sweden, Holland, Italy, Ireland have major problems. Remember that the mainstream media is not showing any of the problems. Howard summed it up very well, says John in Ballabeg. They're not really on your side, Breesha, are they?
No. First of all, my dad's from Bradford, so I have been to Bradford. I've seen how many people are there, and they're not refugees; they're immigrants. And so, as far as crime and stuff, Northern Ireland reported that there had been no accounts or accounts of any hate crime or anything like that. In the communities that the refugees were placed into.
Okay, Joe, how long would you expect a typical Syrian refugee to come to the Isle of Man and stay for?
I think that would depend on how long this crisis lasts and if they feel like they couldn't go home. And at the moment, I don't think they feel they can stay where they are because it's not safe. And I think these people that are making up these comments, they're calling us naive. If you look at the news and you see the constant bombing and killing of all these people, would you want your child to grow up in a country that they were scared every day to live because they could die any moment? And I think we are eventually, if Tynwald looked into investigated the feasibility of bringing refugees, that's what we're aiming for, is them to investigate it and to look at the best way to do that and the best way for these people and for our own people as well.
Okay, Sam, I think underlying what a lot of people are saying is, if Tynwald says yes, the £1.5 million that the Isle of Man sends will be spent on bringing 25 refugees to the Isle of Man, feeding, clothing, watering, housing for a couple of years. The next thing will be that there'll be a petition to bring in Afghani refugees,
it's like the domino effect.
And then Yemeni refugees, and then refugees from any conflict in the world. And so we're opening our door to bring refugees from, and maybe, a Manx pound goes a lot further in Syria than it does on the Isle of Man.
That is true. Our economy is strong and it has greater influence in somewhere like Syria, but the influence that it has there isn't strong enough to protect them. It's not that great, and the thing to do with it leading to us taking more and more, that's just not true. That's just I'm sorry if that's how you feel.
You don't think taking 25 in will mean next year it's going to be 50?
No, not necessarily. I think 25 would be taken in. It would be reviewed. We would see what effect does that have. How's it? Obviously, we'd have done the investigation beforehand, but we would see. Have they integrated well? How much did it cost? Were we above budget? Were we below budget? And then once that had happened, if it turned out, we handled that really well, they've integrated pretty much perfectly, yeah, right, we can take some more, we can handle it. Or if it was right, okay, no, this is we've hit our sort of limit here, this is what we're going to deal with, then it would be like, okay, let's look at new ways to invest. But by doing this, we're not committing to sort of an eternal promise of taking in more and more people. That's not what this is at all.